Okay, in this lesson we are going to be looking at some selection tools, and specifically we're going to be looking at the Photoshop selection tools having to do with the lasso. If you are in one of my classes, on the document, you might be able to find something. Yours might not look like this, but you might find something that looks like this for Photoshop shortcuts and selection tool help. Click here. If you click there, it is just a document that gives you some Photoshop keyboard shortcuts, so shortcut keys that you can read about, and I'll be mentioning throughout this lesson, as well as the variety of selection tools that you can use. And what it says here is basically why to use those selection tools and what they're best for. So the one we're going to focus on mainly is the magnetic lasso, and you can see here it's best for when an image and background has high variation or a complicated selection. So I'm going to go into Photoshop and just first of all explain to you when you will probably be using the magnetic lasso. Before I do that, you can see at the top of Photoshop here, I've got a variety of tabs. So these open up a whole bunch of different images, okay? And that's the way you're gonna probably wanna do selection assignments. The alternative is if you drag, so I've got a document here, so here's a plate. If I drag an image from my File Explorer into that document, it will create a new layer, which can make your selections kind of complicated. You can see here there's the background plate and the strawberry. So the way to avoid creating new layers by dragging is instead of dragging, you click on File and Open. Okay, so if you go to File, Open here, you can then select what you want to open and you will get new tabs. Okay, so magnetic lasso. You would like to use the magnetic lasso on images like the following. These P's here, if I want to select this P, because the background has such a high amount of variation and is very complicated, other selection tools won't work very well. Okay, same thing with this strawberry. The background has other strawberries. It's got highly varied greens and dark colors, etc., which will make Photoshop have a difficult time selecting just the strawberry using other tools, as well as if you look at images like Stranger Things 11 here, if you wanted to select her, you would have to use a lasso tool, specifically magnetic lasso, because the background has a high amount of variation and change to it. Or if you look at Donald Trump sitting here, same thing. His background has lots of variation, lots of different colors, so Photoshop will have a hard time finding his edges using other tools. You can use a magnetic lasso at any point in time, but there are better tools. So if you look at this blueberry, I would suggest not using the magnetic lasso. We'll show you the tools to use in other lessons. Same thing here with the strawberry. Magnetic lasso won't be your most friendly selection tool, okay? Or looking at other things like, for example, this Cheshire cat here. His background is just green. There's better tools to select the Cheshire cat. Okay, so we're going to, in this lesson, look at the strawberry here. And a couple of keyboard shortcuts you want to be aware of is how to zoom in and out. So if you hold down Alt on your keyboard and roll the middle part of your mouse, scroll, you can zoom in and out. Okay, so when you're using selection tools, you don't want to be too far out because you have to be really, really picky if you're zoomed too far out. You also don't want to be zoomed way too far in. It's going to A, be time consuming, and B, might be difficult for your eye to even find those edges. Okay, so there is a perfect amount of zoom. The second thing you need to be aware of is if I press the space bar, I get a little hand here. And what that allows me to do is grab the screen. So while I'm using my magnetic lasso, you're going to see me grab the screen and move so I can get to a new area. Okay, so those are two first keyboard shortcuts. Alt and scroll your mouse, as well as hold your space bar to grab your screen. Okay, so I'm going to go about this far out to my strawberry. You can choose whatever you'd like to, and it comes with practice. You're going to find this very frustrating at first. So the magnetic lasso is a tool, and it's bundled with my other lasso tools here. Okay, the thing that the magnetic lasso tool does is it tries to attach itself to edges. It finds variation in colors and attaches itself to edges. It does an okay job. Okay, so I'm going to go to my magnetic lasso, and an important thing is that if you want to have accurate selections, that the feather up here, these are all of the properties of the magnetic lasso. You want to turn the feather down to 0. Okay, that way your edges will be definite. So a zero pixel feather, and I'm just going to start around the edges of the strawberry. Now you're going to see those little squares that are popping up. You can, if you'd like to, you can click your mouse, or they will appear at a certain distance or time. Okay, so I'm not clicking my mouse at all, but if you do, so if you hear me clicking right now, it's creating those nodes wherever I click, okay? Another thing you need to be aware of is if you cough or sneeze or make a huge mistake, like go out here, if you press the delete key on your keyboard, you can undo, it goes backwards nodes. So you can undo those mistakes and go back to when it was going well, okay? Another thing is that I'm going to show at the end of this lesson is if you make small mistakes, so like this here, or this here, you can either press delete to undo it and go back and fix it, or I'm going to show you how you can refine that later on. So I'm getting close to the edge of my screen here with this leaf. I'm going to press the space bar right now to disengage my magnetic lasso so I can actually move the screen to a new location. So there we go, okay? And this allows me to continue my selection. Now, once in a while I click when I'm at the corners or really important edges of this. You'll hear me click my mouse like at the top of this leaf, just so Photoshop for sure selects that part of the strawberry, okay? But this goes for any selection that you're doing with the magnetic lasso. It doesn't have to be a strawberry, it can be a character or whatever. Okay, so I'm working my way around, and trust me, it will be probably very frustrating the first few times that you use it. Okay, the tool takes a little bit of figuring out. Finally, you have to finish where you started with the magnetic lasso. So once I finish here, I've selected my strawberry. Now what I can do is zoom in. I'm especially going to go to the two areas where I know I made a mistake, and you can be as picky as you want to be, but I'm going to zoom into this area where I selected too much, and then later on this area where I selected not enough of my strawberry. So here's a really cool refinement keyboard shortcut. So to refine your selections, if you need to subtract an area, you're going to hold the Alt key, and you can use any selection tool you want. You can use the magnetic lasso, the polygonal lasso, the quick select, magic wand, etc. But if you want to subtract an area, so I want to subtract this area from my strawberry, I'm going to hold down Alt, and I can start clicking around the part that I'd like to subtract from my selection. Okay, and I'm clicking my mouse here, and I'm going to finish where I started. So what you'll notice is now that area that was over-selected is corrected. And here, this under-selected part, if you want to add a part to your selection, you can hold your Shift key. So if you hold down Shift, you can then loop around the part of the selection that you'd like to add to your selection. Okay, so Alt is subtract, Shift is add. Another thing you can do, so I'm just going to add this to my plate. So my selection's done. I've done a pretty good job. If you press Control C, that is copy. So I'm going to copy that selection. Control C. I'm going to go to my plate and then press Control V. So there's my strawberry. Now it's a really high-res strawberry. So I'm going to want to do a couple of things. I'm going to zoom out. Okay. And when you want to move this strawberry, I'm going to go to my Move tool. So it allows me to move my strawberry. And if you don't see these little boxes out here, really, really critical with your Move tool that you always have the Show Transform controls turned on. Okay, otherwise you can't resize it. Okay, so now I can just resize my strawberry when I show those transform controls. And I could place it on my plate somewhere. Okay, and you can see that's a decently done selection. And the last thing you might want to do is erase areas if you want to. You could pull out your eraser tool and can then make it whatever size you want it to be. Okay, so you can see right there. And I could get rid of this little part here that's inside or between the leaves. Okay, and to change the size of a tool, which you might be interested in into what I'm doing right now, there's two keys right beside the letter P on your keyboard, the two bracket keys. The right bracket key makes your tools bigger, and the left bracket key makes your tools smaller if you ever want to use those. The last thing that you want to do is name your layer. So right here, I can double click on layer 1, and I can call it strawberry. Okay, so that's a lesson on magnetic lasso. Another lasso tool that you might want to use occasionally is called polygonal lasso. It is useful for straight edges. So for example, this box here would be really useful to use the polygonal lasso because I can just click on the corners. There's other ways you can do this, but it does straight edges. Okay, so use the magnetic lasso tool for all those difficult selections. It's a really difficult, can be frustrating tool, but try your best. And if you need help, please let me know at any point in time. And there is the box that's been selected. Okay, and that is it.